Welcome back to part 9 of the rigging tutorial series by myself, IK Handel. In the last video we were talking about position locks and a possible gremlin, in as much as it is best not to move them from the place where they were created. It's perfectly okay to scale and rotate them, but moving them will give you undesired behavior. I'd just like to point out that this is only specific to the position locks. Rotation locks and full locks can be moved, as can IK handles, without any adverse effects. Okay, for your workflow tip for this video, in the last video we made a new library called skeletons, and it was saved at the bottom of the list. What you'll find is that if you close TS and then reopen it, it will then resort them alphabetically. So our skeletons library is now in the S's. But it would be a lot more handy, rather than having to scroll down every time to the S's to find this library, if it was up near the top. So if you right mouse click on the library, rename the library and put a underscore skeletons. Now whenever you close TS and reopen it, you'll find that this library will actually be at the top of the list, so you won't have to keep scrolling down to find your libraries that you have built. Okay, on with the rigging. We'll have a look at some of these, some of the other options now. Let me just show you the action of this IK handle. I'll right mouse click and bring up its properties. So far what we've done is remove all of the options here, just put it up to full IK, full quality. The preserve bone orientation, if you watch the action of the toe bone, you'll see that it's rotating as well as the rest of the chain. But wouldn't it be useful if we could keep this perhaps, say, parallel to the ground? With preserve bone orientation checked, this is effectively what it's doing. And the reason it's doing this is because with preserve bone orientation locked on, it is locking the position of this bone in relation to the IK handle. So in other words, this bone will no longer rotate around the position of the IK handle. So the first bone of this chain is not actually rotating. Its lock has been put on, which in effect for this particular one is keeping it parallel to the ground, which is a useful feature. So to go back, if I take this off, what you'll now find is that it is actually moving up and down, which obviously is a bit harder to pose if you're trying to place it flat on the ground, for example. So that's a useful option. The other advantage of preserve bone orientation as a byproduct of this is currently with it off, if I take this to an extreme pose, what you'll actually find is that it's moving in more than one axis now. It's moving in and out of the screen, which can give you some undesirable control side effects at times. But if you put preserve bone orientation on, it does its level best to keep it in as close to the original plane of the bone as possible. So that's quite useful as well. Okay, let's have a look at use global locks. At the minute, for example, let me take this handle here. What we have is it rotating around the toe. Now, let me come into the Dynapose mode and add an additional lock, a position lock, but I'm not going to associate it with any IK handle at the minute. Back into Dynapose mode, and you'll find that in Dynapose mode you can manually turn on and off locks with a left mouse click, so on and off. At the minute with it off, this is the IK behavior for this handle. If I turn this on, and put use global locks, effectively what it's saying is any lock that's activated, this is within Dynapose, is now going to influence any movement. So what you'll see now is that although the IK handle is basically from here to the toe, and this is activated, because we've now activated this one, it's doing its level best to keep the knee in the same position. So you can use this option within Dynapose of manually turning on and off locks, perhaps to do a specific pose or whatever. But there is one disadvantage. If I go over to my object select mode and use an IK handle, normally what you would get is the straightforward IK behavior between the IK handle and the lock, which in this case is the one down here. But with use global lock selected, what it's actually doing is any lock which is activated within Dynapose mode is now activated also within object select mode. So although we can't see it, not only is this lock activated as we would expect because it's associated with this IK handle, but this lock now has been passed over from the Dynapose mode and is also activated, which gives us this behavior. I would suggest that this can become very confusing, and so I would turn off as a default the use global locks, because then when you drag an IK handle, it will give you the expected behavior without any surprises.